Welcome to my YouTube channel. To all of my returning subscribers, you guys are wonderful and awesome. And if you are visiting this channel for the first time, please like this video, hit the subscribe button, strike the bell notification so you'll be the first to know whenever I post new content. Thank you very much as you do so. So in this week's video, we continue our discussion in Microsoft Purview, and we are going to be seeing how to prevent data loss using Microsoft Purview. We are going ahead, first of all, to lay the groundwork by talking about data loss prevention. We'll talk about what it is, what it does, how you can create it, what are the prerequisites, and some of the benefits of data loss prevention. We then get into the console to begin to create data loss prevention policies. We'll create it in the Purview portal using the GUI. We'll also see how to use Powershell to do the same thing. And then we'll see how to edit these policies. We'll see how to turn these policies on because the policy we created initially was in the test mode. And then, of course, we go ahead to test these policies to see how those policies work. So please stay around till the end of the video. I am sure you would have learned one or two things by the end of the video. It promises to be a very exciting session. Thank you very much as you do so. So in this video, we'll learn how to use DLP or data loss protection to protect our sensitive data across Microsoft 365 applications and endpoints. So let's get started. As an agenda, we are going to be defining DLP or data loss protection. We'll see why we need it. We'll look at the prerequisites. We'll then look at the types of sensitive information that DLP can protect. And then, of course, we'll look at the Microsoft 365 applications and endpoints that DLP can work across. We'll see how DLP works. We'll see how protective actions of DLP comes into play. We'll look at DLP lifecycle and look at some of the stages. We'll talk about the endpoint activities we can monitor and act on with DLP. And then we'll talk about the benefits of DLP also. And then we'll conclude and we move on to the other aspects of this video. So let's get started. So what is DLP? Well, DLP or data loss prevention is a feature of Microsoft Purview that helps us to prevent the accidental or the intentional exposure of sensitive information to unauthorized users. It can identify, monitor, protect sensitive information like credit card numbers, social security numbers, health records, and many more. And it can do that across Microsoft 365 applications such as SharePoint, OneDrive, Exchange, Teams, Power BI, and Fabric. And of course, it can also help in areas such as endpoints for Windows 10 and Windows 11 devices. So, what do we need DLP for? Well, data loss can have serious consequences for our organization. Some of these consequences could include damage to organizational reputation, legal liabilities, regulatory fines, and loss of customer trust. Now, data loss can occur due to several reasons, such as human error, malicious insiders, cyber attack, or the theft of devices. So DLP can help us reduce the risk of data loss by enforcing policies which control how sensitive data is accessed, is shared, or stored across our Microsoft 365 environments and endpoints. So what are the prerequisites of using DLP? Now, before we can use DLP, we need to meet some of the following prerequisites. First of all, we need to have a Microsoft Purview account with the appropriate permissions to create and to manage DLP policies. We also need to have a Microsoft 365 E5 compliance license or a Microsoft 365 E5 or A4 or A5 information protection and governance license for each user that is subject to DLP policies. We then need to have the Microsoft 365 applications that we want to protect with DLP enabled and of course configured within our tenant. And then we need to have sensitive information types that we want to protect with DLP defined and imported into our Purview catalog. And then finally, we also need to have are the endpoint DLP features enabled in our Microsoft 365 Compliance Center and the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Agent installed on all of our devices. So, what are the types of sensitive information that DLP can protect? Well, there are over 100 predefined sensitive information types that are based on common industry standards and regulations. This includes PCI DSS or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. We have the HIPAA or the Health Information Portability and Accountability Act. We also have the GDPR or the General Data Protection Regulation, and many more. Now, we can also create our own custom sensitive information types based on keywords, based on patterns, or based on regular expressions. And some of the examples of sensitive information types that DLP can protect are things like bank account numbers, driver's license numbers, email addresses, password numbers, phone numbers, medical record numbers, IP addresses, and confidential information. So, Microsoft 365 applications and endpoints that can work across DLP include some of the following. It includes SharePoint Online, where DLP can scan and protect files that are stored in SharePoint sites and document libraries. Well, it can also work across OneDrive for Business, where DLP can also scan and protect files that are stored there. In Exchange Online, of course, can protect email messages and attachments sent or received by Exchange users. In Microsoft Teams, it can scan and protect chat messages and files that are shared in Microsoft Teams channels and chats. In Power BI, it can scan and protect data sources and reports published in Power BI workspaces. And for endpoints, it can monitor and protect sensitive data on Windows 10 devices, such as files on local drives, removable drives, or network shares, or even clipboard content, print jobs, and browser uploads. So, how does DLP work? It works by applying policies that defines the following elements. Some of the elements include sensitive information types that we want to protect, the locations where we want to apply the policies, such as specific sites, accounts, groups, workspaces, or devices, the conditions that trigger the policy, such as the presence, count, or confidence level of sensitive information, or the content properties or metadata of the files or messages. Also, we have the actions that the policy takes when the conditions are met, such as blocking access, encrypting, notifying, auditing, or reporting. We also have the exceptions that include certain files, messages, or users from the policies. Now, the user notification that informs the users about the policies are also how it works, and it also says how we can comply with it. So when we create and publish a DLP policy, it is automatically enforced across the locations that we specify, and it scans the existing and new files and messages in those locations and applies the appropriate action based on the policy rules. Now, DLP can also generate alerts and can generate reports to help us to monitor and to analyze the policy effectiveness and compliance status. Now, let's see some of the protective actions of DLP. Now, DLP can take a number of protective actions when the policy is triggered. The protective actions include blocking access, where DLP can prevent unauthorized users from accessing, downloading, or sharing files that contain sensitive information, or from copying, printing, or uploading sensitive data from their endpoints. Now, it could also encrypt, where in this case, encryption will be applied to the files that contain sensitive information so that only authorized users can gain access to the files. It could also do some notification by sending emails to users, to managers, or to administrators when policy violations occur, and providing guidance on how to resolve it. And then there's the auditing aspect, where it can log the policy violations and actions within an audit log, and these audit logs can be accessed and exported for further investigation and reporting. Then it can generate reports as well, showing the policy coverage, the matches, the overrides, and the incidents, and then it can provide insights and recommendations on how to improve the policy effectiveness and compliance status. So, what are the stages of the DLP lifecycle? Now, DLP lifecycle consists of a number of stages. In the discover stage, we identify the sensitive information types that we want to protect and the locations where they are stored or where they are shared across our Microsoft 365 environment or endpoints. And then we want to classify by defining and importing the sensitive information types into our Microsoft Purview catalog and assigning them labels and tags describing their characteristics and their sensitivity levels. Now, in the protect stage, we will be creating and publishing the DLP policies to specify the rules and the actions for protecting the sensitive information types across the Microsoft 365 applications and endpoints. And within the monitor stage, we'll be using DLP alerts and reports to track and then to analyze the policy effectiveness and compliance status, and then identify any issues or gaps that needs to be addressed. Then finally, in the improvement stage, we'll be reviewing and updating the policies based on insights and feedbacks from the monitoring stage, and then we'll be optimizing the policy performance and compliance status. So, what are some of the activities that we can monitor and act on with DLP? Now, with DLP, we can monitor and act on a number of activities that involve sensitive data within our environment and even on our devices. For example, in the copy to clipboard, a DLP can detect when a user copies sensitive information to the clipboard and then can block or allow the action based on the policy. It could also detect when a user prints a document that contains sensitive information and block or allow the action also based on policy. It can then go ahead to know when a user uploads a file containing sensitive data to a web browser, and then of course it has the action of blocking or allowing the policy of the action based on the policy. For network transfers, it can detect when a user transfers a file containing sensitive data to a network share, and then it has the option of allowing or blocking the action also based on policy. For removable storage, DLP can detect when a user copies a file that contains sensitive data to a removable storage device, storage devices such as USB drives, and then it can block or allow the action based on policy. Now, we can configure the endpoint activities that we want to monitor and act on in the DLP policy rules. We'll be doing that by selecting the appropriate options in the device activity section, which we are going to be seeing when we get into the lab environment. So, are there any benefits to DLP? Yes, there are several benefits to data loss prevention. So, first of all, it can help us raise awareness and can educate users about the best practices that we have for handling sensitive data. It will be doing that by displaying policy tips and notifications that explain the policy rules and actions and how to comply with these actions. It could also help us in remediation, where it can resolve the policy violations and incidents that occur. It will do that by allowing us to override or to justify the actions, to report false positives, or to restore the data from a quarantine. We could also do some integrations with DLPs, where it can work seamlessly with other Microsoft 365 applications and security solutions, such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Cloud App Security, and Microsoft Information Protection. It does that to provide a comprehensive and a unified approach for protecting our data across the cloud and across endpoints. And then the monitoring as a benefit can help us to track and analyze the data activity and incidents in our organization. It will do that by giving us rich reports and dashboards showing the trends, the patterns, and the risk of data exposure and leakage. So, we've looked at the key concepts of data loss prevention. We've looked at the importance of data loss prevention and seen how it works across Microsoft 365 applications and endpoints. We've considered the prerequisites for using DLPs, the type of sensitive information that it can protect, and the various stages of a DLP lifecycle. So generally, with DLPs, we can achieve better cloud security and data privacy across our organizations. So DLP in Purview, we can see, is an indispensable tool for any organization that values data security. It not only protects sensitive information, but it also fortifies the organization's reputation and legal standing. So organizations can then enjoy the peace of mind that comes with a robust DLP strategy, ensuring that the organization's data and by extension its future is secure. And then we are going to be moving on to the next aspects of this video, where we are going to be diving into the console and we are going to be implementing some of these things we've talked about. So please stay tuned. It promises to be a very interesting aspect of this video. Thank you as you do so. All right, we are in the Purview portal and we want to begin the process of creating and deploying a data loss prevention policy. But before we do that, there are a number of things that we want to clarify. The first one is the subscription and the license. For you to be able to create a data loss prevention policy in Microsoft Purview, you've got to have the appropriate license. And at the very minimum, you have to have a Microsoft 365 E3 license. Now, but if you are not an E5 customer, or that is, you have a lower subscription, such as an E3, you can use the 90 days Microsoft Purview Solutions trial to be able to explore some of the additional Purview capabilities that's going to be allowing your organization to manage data security and compliance needs. And that's one thing. Now, another thing is you may require, if you want to create your policy to a subset of your directory, you may want to create administrative units. Now, to create administrative units, you'll be doing that in Microsoft Entra ID portal, and you will also require to have an E5 license as well to be able to do so. Now, other things you want to do is, if you want to create your policies and you want it to affect specific security groups or Microsoft 365 groups, you will also go ahead to do that. To create those groups, you'll be doing that in Microsoft 365 admin portal. And then before we get into the nitty gritty, you need to have the appropriate permission. The account that you use to create and deploy policies has got to be a member of any of the roles that I'm going to mention. It's got to be a member of the compliance administrator role, the compliance data administrator role, the information protection role, the information protection admin role, or the security admin role. So you've got to have fulfilled all of those requirements to be able to create DLP policies. Now we are going to be creating the policy here in test mode, and we are going to be doing that to allow us to monitor the policy to see that it works as we expect it. And then in the next part of the video, we're going to go ahead and put it on, take it off from test mode so that it becomes operational fully. So we are in the Microsoft Purview portal. I am signed in as a global admin, but again, like I usually point out, this is too much permission whenever you are demonstrating or whenever you are configuring things like this in your production environment. You want to use the appropriate permissions rather than the global admin permission, which is a bit too much for you to do this. So we are in the Purview portal here. We want to scroll all the way down, and then we want to go and expand data loss prevention, and then we'll click on policies. That takes us to the policy section. We want to go ahead and click on create a policy, and it launches the wizard for us here. So we can see here that we've got a number of categories in the policy. If we click on one of the categories, for example, the enhanced category, it gives us the list of all of the regulations that we can base our policies off of. We can see the Graham-Leach-Bliley Act and a whole lot of them. We can see HIPAA and all of that here. We have a number of policies like financial, medical, privacy. But for this case, I'm going to be starting from scratch. So I'm going to be clicking under policies. I'm going to click custom, and it gives me one regulation, which is the custom policy, which I'm going to also click on. And it tells me here that I can create a custom policy from scratch, which is exactly what I want to do. I want to choose the type of content that I want to protect. I want to see how I'm going to be protecting that. So that's important. Again, in your own instance, you may not be starting from scratch, but just for the completeness of this demonstration, I want to start from scratch. So I've chosen custom and I've chosen custom policy, and then I want to go ahead and click on next. So clicking on next, it prompts me to give my policy a name. I'm going to go ahead and give it a name, and then I'm going to also give it a description here. While giving it a description is not a mandatory option, we can see that the name here has a red asterisk, meaning that you cannot proceed without creating a name. The description doesn't, so you can actually proceed without creating a putting in a description. But again, like I said, for the purposes of completeness, I want to put in a description. So I'm going to come here and say that this policy, this allows the sending of credit card numbers in messages. So I'll just give it a simple description like that. I'll do this correction here, and that's all we need to do. I'll just correct here. It's actually card, not crad, and it's actually numbers, not number. Okay, so I now have a name, I have a description. That's all this page requires. I'll go ahead and click on next. So of course, it gives me, it tells me it's going on to validate. Now take note about the name. Once you've created a name, you will not be able to change the name. You may be able to edit the policy, but editing the policy will not allow you to change the name. So you've got to be sure of the name you want to assign to your policy before you go ahead and create it. So once you've created a policy, you cannot change the name. You can edit the policy. For you to change the name may mean deleting the policy altogether and creating the name the way you want it from scratch. So it's important to put in the appropriate planning before you embark on the process of creating a policy. Now, this is the screen here where we want to, if we want to apply our policies to admin units, of course, you should have created the admin units beforehand. And also note, like we mentioned earlier, you would need an E5 license to be able to configure admin units. Of course, you'll be creating admin units in Entra ID console, but I don't want to. I want to apply this to the full directory. So I'll go ahead and click on next. So now here is where we want to choose the location where we want to apply our policies. So in this case, you want to apply your policies in a specific location. So I'm going to uncheck all the areas where I do not want to apply my policy in. I want to apply my policies just in Teams, chats, and channel messages. That's where I want to apply my policy. And of course, you have the option to edit this if you want by just going ahead to click on edit. If you want to apply your policies to email messages, you are going to go ahead and click on this to ensure that the policies will be applicable to email messages. So that's these are the locations where I want my policies to be applicable to. I just go ahead and click on next. But take note that you can apply your policies to multiple places, to multiple locations. In this case, I'm just applying my policy to one location. So I'll go ahead and click on next. Okay, now that takes us to the defined policy settings screen here, page here, where we can see that create or customize advanced DLP rules is selected by default. Now, this is where you will be applying your DLP rules. So I want to go ahead and with this selected, I want to go ahead and click on next to open up the customized advanced DLP rules. So I want to go ahead and click on create a rule. Now that opens the create a rule flyout page here. So I want to go ahead and populate all of these things. For example, I can say I want to call it Contoso credit card policy rule, and I want to go ahead and also give it a description, again noting that the name here is mandatory and the description here is optional. But like I said, it is usually best to always give it a description to allow other people to know exactly what you want to do. So I'll say this is a rule that this allows sending credit card information in messages. For example, I'll just do some spelling check, and that's all I want to do right here. Now, it takes us to conditions. We have come to conditions where we are going to apply this policy to content that matches the following conditions which we want to define. So I'll go ahead and click on add, and I'll go ahead and select content contains. Okay, so that brings us to the content contains page where we are going to apply this policy to the content that matches this condition. Now, for example, I want to select add, and I want to go ahead and select sensitive information types. To add a sensitive information type, I'll go ahead and type, since it is credit card related, I'll go ahead and type credit card and search, and then I'll go ahead and check the box next to credit card, and then I'll go ahead and click on add to add the credit card. So we can see that we have the credit card number added, and we can see that we have it specified as high confidence, and we have the instance and all of that added as well. So I've added a credit card, and then I want to go ahead and add a condition. So I'll scroll down here, I'll click on add condition, and we can see here that the condition here is content is shared from Microsoft 365. So I'll go ahead and select content is shared from Microsoft 365 from the drop down menu. Now that takes us to the content is shared from Microsoft 365 section, which I want to now ensure that only people inside my organization is shared. But take note that there are other options. But of course, to keep it simple, I'm going to just select this one, which by the way is the default. So I'll ensure that only with people inside my organization option is what is applicable. So I want to move on and go to the action section, and then I want to go ahead and add an action. And from the add an action here, we have two options. I'm going to select restrict access or encrypt the content in Microsoft 365 locations, which is the option I want to select. Now it takes me to that, it selects that option, and it has some other radio buttons pre-selected. For example, block users from receiving emails is selected. Block only people outside my organization is selected. But for this setting, I want to go ahead and click on block everyone. So block everyone is what is selected. Then that takes us to the next setting, which is user notification. I want to turn user notification on by clicking on that radio button there. And then I want to select the checkbox to enable notify users in Office 365 service with a policy tip. So what that means is that, of course, once the policy is in effect, there will be a tip for the user, and the user will be able to read the tip, and the tip is going to be giving the user some additional information. But of course, you can choose to customize your policy tip. What that means is that you can actually specify what you want the user to see. But I'm going to just leave it the way it is. It takes us to the user overrides section here. Now, in the user override section, I want to allow users to override policy restrictions in Fabric, including Power BI, Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. So I want to go ahead and select that checkbox right there. And then I want to also check the require a business justification to override. That means that if the user has an appropriate justification, then they can override the policy. So that takes me to the incident report section. Now, in the incident report section, we have here a section called the use this severity level in admin alerts and reports. I want to go ahead and select the list option here. I'll go ahead and click on low, but take note that I have the option of selecting medium or high, but I want to select low in this case here. So we move on. It takes us to the policy page here. I want to go ahead and click on save. That's all of the setting that I want to do here. I want to go ahead and click on save, and it takes me back. It should take me back. Just click on save again. Okay, so it takes me back to the customized advanced DLP rules. You see, I've specified, these are all of the conditions I've specified. I want to go ahead and click on next. Now it takes me to the policy mode here, where the default is to run this policy in simulation mode. That is, it's going to show me the items that match the policy conditions, helping me to evaluate the impact of the policy. Of course, it will not affect the data. The policy stays off while in simulation. So this is actually a good way to see how your policies will behave, and if you are satisfied with the policy, you can come and turn it on, which I'm going to demonstrate in a later section of this video. Then we want to go ahead and click on next. But if you wanted to turn on this policy, you'd have gone on to turn on the policy immediately. So I'll go ahead and click on next in this case. Now that takes us to the review and finish screen. So you still have the option of editing any of the details you've included here, including the name if you want. And of course, if you want to do that, you just go ahead and click on any of the links where you can edit the setting. But I'm satisfied with what I've done. I want to go ahead and submit the policy. So it goes ahead to do some checks and all of that. It's submitting, and then eventually, of course, when it is happy with everything, it will either throw, it will give me the details that it has been completely done. But of course, if it is unhappy, it's going to throw an error and tell me that, hey, you've got some challenges that you need to fix here and there, and it will be my responsibility to fix it. So our policy has been created, and then I'll go ahead and click on done, and we'll move on to the next aspect of the video. Well, our policy is created. We can see here that we have the notification that we have the new policy created. We can see all of that, and all I've got to do here is to click on done. I'll just go ahead and click on done, and that's it. So we should see our policy listed as one of the policies here. We can see here that's the policy we created. You can look at the date of policy creation here. Now, another thing we can do is we can go ahead and delete, not delete, we can go ahead and also edit our policy if we wanted to. So we can just select it and go ahead and click on edit policy if we wanted to edit our policy as well. So we cannot just create policies here. We can go ahead and edit whatever policies that we have created by just selecting the policy and clicking on edit policy. So it takes us again. We can see that, like I said earlier on, we can't rename the policy, but we can edit certain aspects of the policy. You can see that the policy name is not available for change, but of course the description is available for change. We can go ahead and add whatever description we want, or we can go ahead and take away the descriptions we want as well. I can say, for example, in email messages and not in chats, for example. So it takes that, and I can go ahead and click on next. And of course, we can go ahead, if we had an admin unit, we can come in here and add the admin unit. So I'll go ahead and click on next. We can go ahead and increase, add some more locations where we want our policy to be applicable to. I'll go ahead and click on next. We can go ahead and see, we can come here and edit the rules by coming to click on the pencil icon. We can see all of the details. If we want to come and edit them, we can remove some, we can add some more, we can do a whole number of things here. We can add exceptions, we can change all of these settings. I'll go ahead and click on cancel since I didn't do anything. I'll go ahead and click on next here. Of course, we can now sit down and change the policy mode. We can go ahead and do all that as well. We can change the policy mode if we wanted to. I can, for example, say I want to turn on the policy immediately, or I want to leave the policy turned off, and all of that. And once I'm done, I'll click on next, and then I'll go ahead and click on submit, and it goes ahead to submit the policy, reviews it before doing so. And once it's done submitting the policy, it goes ahead to tell me that my policy is now complete. And of course, it finishes everything. And we can see that our policy has been updated. And then I'll go ahead and click on done. So that is how we can edit our DLP policies in Microsoft Purview. So we've looked at creating DLP policies in Purview, and we've seen how we can edit these policies as well. There are other ways we can create policies within the Microsoft 365 environment. And one of the ways we can use in creating policies is through the use of PowerShell. So we are going to demonstrate how to create DLP policies in PowerShell. So I'll go ahead and launch an elevated PowerShell prompt. So I'll go ahead and run as administrator. Now you want to note that for you to be able to create data loss prevention policies, you've got to have installed the appropriate Exchange Online Management module. So typically you want to run this command, install module. Of course, I've done this before, but you want to run that. And after you've done that, you want to go ahead and then import the module. So I'll also import, for example, and then you click on run to be able to do that. Now, after you've done that, I've done this already just to give us the benefit of doing this faster. We want to go ahead and do a connection. So I want to run connect IPPS session. I want to connect to that session with the appropriate credentials. So I want to do a connection. I'm connecting here as a global admin, but remember, you've got to have the appropriate permissions to be able to run this. So I'll click on sign in. And of course, it usually may take a few minutes to give me a prompt, but you want to run this as well. It gives us some information here. And once we are ready, it's going to take us back to the prompt where we can go ahead and run the appropriate commands. So we want to go on and create DLP policies using PowerShell. We've connected to PowerShell, we've cleared the screen. But just before we do that, we want to go and do a few confirmations. And now we are in the policy screen. Okay, the policy screen is taking time to load. And once it loads fully, we are going to see that we do not have any policy by the name of what we want to create. For example, we want to create a new policy. We want to just confirm that the policy does not exist here. So once we create the policy, we'll now go ahead and confirm and see if the policy is created. So we want to create a policy called Employee ID DLP policy. We want to give it a description here, which is this policy blocks sharing of employee driver's license number. We want to apply it to all of the exchange locations. So the name of the policy is basically Employee ID DLP policy. So let's go and be sure that there's no policy like that. If we look carefully here, there is currently no policy by that name. So I want to go ahead and create a policy. I just hit on enter, and then the policy is created. The next thing I want to do is I want to create the DLP compliance rule right here. So we see here we've got the new DLP compliance rule. Of course, that's the name of the rule. It's a rule associated with the policy which we had created before, and we specify some of the settings, and we are basing it off of a template here, which is the UK driver's license number. So we want to go ahead and create this policy. Sorry, create the policy rule. And it is created. So it gives us some of the settings for the rule. If we go ahead and scroll up, and we're going to see some of the settings. It just picks up the settings we specified. That's the globally unique identifier, and those are all of the settings right there. So we are now ready to go back and do a refresh. And if we refresh here, we should see that our policy is now available. That's the policy that we created. And of course, we should see, yeah, that's it there. So that's yet another way to be able to create DLP policies. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and test our policies to see if they work as we expect. All right, so we've created our DLP policies. We've created it in the console. We've gone ahead to use Powershell to create it. Now we want to test our policy. So to test the policy, I want to specifically test the one I created in PowerShell, which is to block uh, the sending of UK driver's license numbers in messages. That's what the PowerShell policy was configured to do. So to do that now, I am logged in as a separate user here in Microsoft Outlook. So I want to go ahead and create an email. I want to give it a subject such as, please review this, or I think that should be in plural, these UK driver's license numbers, for example. And then I want to move on to paste the details like that. I want to allow this to copy from clipboard, so I'll allow that. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to maybe send it to somebody. Okay, and you can see immediately I put in an email address, it tells you that your email message conflicts with the policy in your organization. It gives me a policy tip, and I can see the details here once I click on show tip and all of that, and I can hide the details here. And if I try to send, let's see, if I try to send, it tells you, of course, it tells me that this message includes one or more recipients that are not authorized to receive sensitive information. Please remove those recipients and try to send the message again. So it tells me, it blocks the send, and it gives me a tip as well. So let's see if I can, this policy was to be applicable to all members of the organization. Let's go ahead and put in another user and see if it's going to allow me. Let's try to send it to Megan. And again, it prompts me all of these details here. And if I try to send, again, it gives me all that information again, telling me that the send is blocked. The message includes one or more recipients that are not authorized to receive sensitive information. Please remove those recipients and try to send the message again. So we can see here that our details work. And of course, that brings us to the concluding part of this video. Thank you very much for your time. And of course, I hope you learned one thing or two. Bye for now, until the next video.